All right. I need approval of the agenda.
Okay. Oh, that's right, yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, very good. Cheers, happy.
All right, so I would love to do this in like a 4 to 6 hour period to discuss a number of things with the board, but for some reason I figured I'd get a lot of resistance to that. So I am not trying to do that. I'm trying to kind of pigeonhole the items that I want to discuss with this board because there are questions that I need some answers or some direction or at least some guidance to understand where this board is interested in going with certain projects. So one of those items that has kind of bounced around is the Parkwood Basler Road project. Keep one passing on, keep one passing on. I know that it was discussed before. There was certain amounts of, I think, grant funding that had come along with it. There was some research done. That was, and it just fell apart. So it is an item you'll have to share between each other. I've got 4. On the comprehensive plan, which is the large sheet that I'm passing around.
Got one more?
Yeah, no.
You got to
No, I gotta share.
You guys have to share that.
These are color prints.
This is Ward 2.
These are color prints. These are expensive. So on the master plan, you'll see where Parkwood extends from 61 out to, well, at that time was a proposed South Road, but that's now Progress Parkway. Also included like they call Spring Trail. Looks like Oakwood was going to extend out at one time. Basler was going to tie into it. The issue with this is that Basler does not show going all the way through to Progress Parkway. It does show Oakwood going all the way through, or I'm sorry, Parkwood going all the way through to Progress Parkway. So we have to consider what the master plan design was about and keep that in mind as we go forward. But there has been some questions as to whether Parkwood should go all the way through, because I think there's some resistance from residents that consider it to be a residential street. So here's my arguments from my side. I just want to throw these out to give you some thoughts, and then you can give me your feedback. Parkwood has about, I think it's like 55–60% commercial on that road as it is now, because it's you've got the doctor's offices, the Tractor Supply, Equipment Pro, and then you've got the apartment complexes all on the west side. On the east side, you go a block, and then you're into the residential part of it. It's a wide road. It has an intersection with 61 that has a middle turn lane. Now, it is about the same distance from the intersection at 61 and 32 as Basler is. So there's no advantage to there's a big long distance between the intersections. But there is a better middle lane for vehicles to queue if they're turning left. If they're going east and they need to go left, there's more room on 61 than there is on 32. So that's one of my concerns, is that intersection at 32 with Basler could be contentious at times. Are we creating a worse situation? Doesn't mean you can't expand that road and then put in a longer middle lane, but you don't have much room to work with. Kind of the same with both streets. Basler is perfect for commercial. It's got all commercial businesses, sheriff's department, the old 911 office. It's got the church down at the end of the road. And I'm not saying it's not built for it. It is. It's a good spot. It would be a good connector to go through as well. But that's my argument as to why I think Parkwood should be is a better choice at this point, based on what I've seen, what I know, and that's just from my outsider's point of view of what I've driven and looked at. So there is some consideration that does the Parkwood extension make better sense to that property if you're going to divide it up into residential or into commercial, because then you have more room on the sides for houses or for businesses. More than likely it's going to be residential. Yes. Our commercial is pretty much located along those strips. That's where people want to be, is on the highway. on Center, and then downtown. Downtown has its own unique type of commercial area, but it's a mixed-use type area, but that's where they're located. So you're probably not going to pull it out towards Progress. But this also connects up to the ball field. That was one of the other things. People were trying to get a connection so that people can get to the baseball field or football field. From the Parkwood side, it would make a connection to Progress Parkway. If you put a sidewalk in, so you can access the trail, get up to the community center, get up to the splash park, so that you're not having to go out on the highway. Kids can ride their bicycles on those streets, whereas kids on 32 is just not not where you really want them to be.
RM road, but there is a sidewalk on that.
Right. So, and I asked David to be here too, because he's got more background than I do on this stuff. So any questions that you have as we talk about this. But this is kind of the planning part, is that there is some discussion about what to do with that church property, if something could be done with it. What is the wish of the board for us to pursue and to encourage? Because we're going to be asked. We're going to be the ones that go through P&Z to approve the subdivision. You're going to be the ones that approve what P&Z says yes or no to, or not approve what P&Z says yes or no to as a subdivision. So I need some guidance as to what you think. We've got representatives from that ward. They've gotten some feedback. So I need that information so I can take it back to others.
Happy or Dave, what do we know about the composition of the Parkwood, the current stub, if you will, as far as concrete? What rated vehicles can be on there without breaking that street up? Do we know?
In the condition it's in right now, unknown.
There's a problem with that street. When they were put in the base, apparently, I guess it's the base, it's not so good, the street. Well, you know what the street's doing.
I'm very familiar.
And somewhere along the line, I don't know when it was, where they fixed part of that street on is that Park? That goes across there?
Point base.
Yeah.
Point Base, yes, Point Base, they fixed a section of that street. Well, what they did there probably needs to be done everywhere. But if you're going to extend that, I would think that you, and for the future, if the city's going to grow with the rooftops, this is part of this plan that, and I know you're going to get some kickback, but if we want some growth as far as rooftops, how do you not entertain this?
Right.
Plus, you have not only with us in it, you have the county's very interested in this project.
Oh.
I've met with them, the chamber, the IDC board, they're all interested in, COVID stopped it. There were some, you went to some conversations with rooftops. And there's some perfect opportunities out there on Progress Parkway, and the church has got some land out there. We have land out there, and it's ideal.
Well, I think it's a good project, but I don't represent 100% of the views in that area. When I say it's a good project, I get many replies that, no, it's not a good project. So the concern is the degradation of what's already there in Parkwood.
Yeah.
So we would have to refresh that engineering, get a new plan, and if we do that, I think we need to have somebody study what commercial vehicles of whatever weight, axle weight, or however they think about that, what is that going to do to the concrete on Parkwood, and how do we mitigate further degradation of that? Yeah, so
the biggest concern from your constituents that you've heard of is the traffic on the roads.
Additional traffic in that area. But I've never had the conversation with anybody that I've talked with about that. I've never said, well, hey, the majority of the street is commercial already. So that's the other thing. It's an education program that needs to happen in that ward where we say, hey, it's not residential now. So we'd only be expanding commercial anyway, and it would benefit the community.
Well, I just think tonight, though, is it a project that we should be thinking about and moving on?
Well, not necessarily us, but if somebody wants to develop this property, this is going to be on our master plan that has to be developed. I mean, that's why we drew that in there to begin with. We can adjust the master plan the comprehensive plan and say, no, we don't want to do that, but keep that in mind, that's what it says it needs, and that we want. So if somebody brings a plan in, they wouldn't have it in there, we'd go, doesn't meet our comprehensive plan, redraw. So if we're gonna bend that or change that, I need to know, so we can guide people who are asking, what do we need to do for a through street on this?
There's a compelling case to add rooftops in that area, and it would need to incorporate this plan.
But we have to have an agreement from the landowner, though, saying that if we extend that road through there, it's not just gonna be a thoroughfare road. There's gonna be development alongside that road.
Absolutely.
You know, to do that, so how can we tie that all together?
So when you say that, you're talking about
Well, just-
development on each side of it, or?
Well, sure, I mean, just extending the road through there is not gonna add any homes or anything, it's just gonna add another road to maintain.
No,
So
I'm
we don't
talking,
extend it till it's being developed.
I'm talking about somebody bringing a development in, showing the houses that would be in there, and showing what this road is, what they're, based on elevations, what they think they would have to change, move, you know, fill, whatever, grade, that the road would go this way, but it has to go through. It has to connect from where it ends now to Progress Parkway.
Can't be a cul-de-sac.
Right. Right.
They would be responsible for the improvements.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
not us.
I understand that, but just a road going through there is not gonna accomplish if we don't tie it together with the development.
Yeah, but the road wouldn't be developed until
There'd be
the
a
land's
development.
being developed for homes or commercial, whatever we decide.
And the land is, the contention in this is, who owns the land? The Catholic Church owns this land.
Right, on
And that's
both.
always been the problem, to get it in there, and, you know, for them, because it's gotta come through their people, and it's very difficult. you
But
know.
people are interested in having that discussion now.
They are
And that
interested.
wasn't
They are
always the
interested
case.
now.
Yeah, that was not always the case, and it is the
That's right.
case now.
And so are you asking our opinion on rooftop versus commercial, or am I, like, I'm not understanding completely what you're asking us for tonight?
Well, the argument is, you've got residents that don't want Parkwood to be used as really a commercial type of through street.
Mm-hmm.
When I say commercial, I just mean it's a connector road.
Yeah, in commercial, yeah, it's,
It's not a full commercial, but it is a connector road. You will have traffic from 61 out to Progress Parkway. Basler's would be 32 to Progress Parkway. I'm just arguing as to why Parkwood works.
Yeah.
You know, Basler does, but doesn't. I think if you get both streets, you eliminate all the traffic on one street, and it works out well. But I don't want to move forward with somebody saying, well, here's my development, and here's how we want to develop this property, and they show, you know, Parkwood ending in a cul-de-sac, and Basler goes over to the ball field, that's it. And then they're coming off of Progress Parkway with another road that goes to the development, but it doesn't go through, don't connect.
And so this is your proposal?
This is
With-
a demonstration that was brought,
Yeah, but this explains how you have both of them connecting to Progress, ideally, or potentially.
potentially.
You know, the one positive with Basler, you're not dealing with any residential there now, other than
Other than the
apartments,
apartment
which
complex,
is
yeah.
not really,
I think that even there, the Baptist church, even that road up there, they own a big section of that road. I believe.
It hasn't been dedicated?
I don't think so.
Good. So that could be an issue.
Yeah, it will be an issue. So, either way, and I'm looking at this is what I'm seeing here is, what are the board, our goals, and is this a goal for the board? If this develops, comes forward, is this something the board is gonna stand behind, get behind and go with? And when it comes, and it might not be this board, it could be 2 years from now, I don't know. you
Right.
know, So, but I think we have to think about the future of the city.
I would ask that you guys consider it, because in my mind, the biggest danger is to sit here and not do a thing with this,
Right.
and let it sit and
Well,
just not be developed.
Yeah, that's the alternative that we're talking about here. If we don't
Right.
support this, is that it remains farmland
Well,
or
if you-
whatever.
You can, if you don't support Parkwood, do you support Basler going through? So if we're not gonna run Parkwood through, then if Basler is your choice, then
Yeah.
then we focus on that.
I mean, I agree with your assessment about connecting both of them similarly to what you have here. That way it can potentially alleviate some of the traffic off of Parkwood onto Basler for potentially more commercial
If you could do a phase 1 and phase 2 where both get connected and those both load share traffic eventually, and that would ease some minds in that ward potentially.
Especially if you can develop, if the land's developed where residential can primarily be in this area and commercial on the other side. You know, I don't know how that would work in the development phase, but if you can keep more of the residential coming off the Parkwood, I think you'd have a lot more support from that area, the way it sounds.
You know, when you get to an end of a piece of property like, you know, the Basler extension, when you cut off the last portion of their property rather than divide it, it's always seemed like it's an easier battle, you know, to get it done. You're not splitting their property or limiting access from one side to the other. You're cutting off that end piece, but and then not having to talk to residential about, you know, even though when you look at Parkwood and stuff, that road was built with the design that it was going to be extended at one time.
It sure
got that
looks
little
like it.
stub sticking
Yeah.
back there that,
I'm sure it was. That was the intention.
The higher level discussion is that this breaks loose something that hasn't happened for X years and sets in motion the development of that property for rooftops. And when you talk to IDC, county, even the chamber, everybody clamors for the rooftops because that's going to spur business growth in the area.
Well, honestly, we need it. I mean, I was shopping for my house a little over a year ago, and it's tough, especially for a single income earner. A lot of the homes are getting bought up and being rented out or renovated to where it takes stuff out of the price range. So if you can add in that middle price range of homes that are ready to go, move-in ready, you know, being built, then it opens up for younger people to want to stay here and potentially buy some of the lower income houses and make it their own.
But we've got to have eyes wide open going into any deal like that because somebody's going to carry a risk.
right.
Somebody's going to risk building X number of houses that sit. I mean, that's just the risk. That's how anything works. There's no guarantee. But we've already had a number of years where we did nothing. We already tried that. And where are we at?
And honestly, if this doesn't get developed, where else are you going to develop within city limits to grow us?
You'd have to annex. Somebody would have to have friendly annex in.
Well, and that problem is, you know, we're landlocked in a lot of areas and stuff, but, you know, I had the same conversation with a previous administrator a few years back, and according to the information I was given, this was all set to go, and all the relevant parties were ready. This board is the one that voted it down, so.
Not this board, but a board.
A board, correct, right, a board, not this board, but a board, you know, but.
Well, maybe Joe, were you around back then?
I remember some of it, but Buck's been here 40 years.
Oh, Buck was on that board.
Well, I don't remember what the sticking point.
You know, but it's,
We were gonna
I don't
use
remember that
TIF
either.
money, but then something else came up that was, I don't remember.
you know, but the key to getting this through is a joint effort with all the parties involved, the county, chamber, everybody, IDC, you know, not just the city. This needs to be a joint effort because numbers speak a lot of words.
Well, it won't get done without all
Right.
those parties coming to the table. Churches need to come together with the county and city. It's got to happen.
So what I'm hearing is this board representing the city is on board and engaged.
Right, and we need to take the discussion
Okay.
to the interested parties, all the interested parties involved, and let's sit down, get our heads together and see if it's a viable project.
Is that what you mean?
Sounds good.
Well, and host some open forum
Yeah.
meetings with folks that want to attend and voice opinion about traffic in that area.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
think
and if you
that's-
have,
And then the idea of the two would be great for alleviation of traffic.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move forward with Project
Want these
Parkwood.
back or not?
Sharon?
You want to frame that?
I got no problem at all, thank you.
Sure.
That's probably good, right?
I guess
So
we're
this
sharing
is the
again.
property that we, this is the Project Parkway property that we have. So one of the comments was,
Gotta
we need
share
to,
again?
we need to advertise it or we need to do something with it. It's industrial. That's what the purple means. That's what it is zoned for. So there's a little section that hasn't shown up on this map yet that'll be residential, but that's the 5 acres that Mark Heisen defined. But the rest of it is industrial. So, do you want us to pursue anything else with this property? We can try to look for buyers, we can put it out on the market. It seems like it has sat still. What kind of incentives would you want to throw in with that, or no incentives? We can.
Is that the 5 acres, that little
Yeah.
square right there?
Yeah.
Right here?
So we're gonna keep it light
This is
industrial?
the water park.
If you have a light industrial, is there any option for them to put rooftops?
This
No.
is part.
You have to
We have to rezone it.
That's
We can leave it as industrial, but that was the concept, was.
Is it possible for a mixed out there like it is downtown, or what do you recommend?
Haven't really gotten into the trying to decide what to do with it, or what could be developed. I've had somebody approach me about, and this is just a concept, that they weren't gonna do it, but putting in senior housing and, putting in a large development out there that seniors can move into, and then they'd be close to the community center and close to the splash park. We've looked at it as, if you keep splitting it off, you're gonna have smaller chunks that would be commercial. Is commercial gonna go on that road? I think it's too far away from 61 at some point, and I think, unless you have all these rooftops nearby, you're not gonna be able to do anything commercial with it. Industrial, I don't know if industry is where if that's where you want it. You do want it on the outer edges, but in light industrial is not as much of a problem as say heavy industrial, and that's what that is light industrial.
So if it's general commerce, that means you can do both? What is, I'm sure my ignorance, I don't know.
So it's limited to industrial. Does industrial doesn't include commercial, does it, as a?
You can do a commercial use, just not residential.
Okay.
Could you put a senior citizen home or an apartment building?
We would rezone that.
Okay.
It would be a planned unit,
And what would that have to be zoned if it was an apartment building?
R4.
Because we had a developer come down, that I know of that talked to our previous city administrator, and they were concerned with it being zoned industrial. Is there an issue with that?
And Martin didn't say anything about that needed to be changed. I think he was just looking at it from a marketing point of view, or trying to get it out there to see if anybody was interested.
I'd rather see rooftops.
I mean, I think the need
Is rooftops.
is rooftops, but maybe even in an apartment setting or a condo setting where
And
it's.
then maybe some stores or something to support the people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what
I
I'm
think
thinking.
that.
So I'm thinking mixed.
I think
So does it have to be all or-
Any development is gonna involve, you can trust me on this, any development out there, even the earlier one we talked about, is gonna involve a mixture of single-family residential and multiple family.
Okay, so if we're going to take this out to market and put it out there for sale, would we be better suited to change the zoning now or leave it as is?
If you would see it as more of a residential use, I would say putting it out
I
as
agree.
residential would be more,
I think we should put it
Why
out as
does it have to
residential.
be all or nothing? Why can't we keep part of it one way and part of it the other way?
well, you can, yeah, whatever you want to do with it.
But whatever we put it out there as, we have to be willing for it to be developed as.
Well,
Right.
Can't we advertise it that it's zoned this now but could be changed?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
it can always be changed. It's just, I don't know if people get scared off seeing industrial, or if
Yes.
I know that my developer did, my
I don't know
buddy.
if potential developers, residential developers is gonna wanna bump up against an industrial.
Yeah, they're not going to want to build buildings when there's a factory that moves in next to them.
Well, Bob, the difference is we are in the position to drive how it gets done
Right.
versus having somebody bring it to us and then dictate
Right.
to us how.
And so,
There's merit in both,
yeah, why would you want to eliminate
Right, I
a
agree.
factory employing 50 people or 100 people to,
so with that kind of talking with, I think with what Gary was hitting on, do we zone it residential and advertise it as that to try to attract the developer, but give them the caveat that it could be rezoned? That way you're attracting a residential developer, but you can still rezone it to commercial?
I like that spin because that way your residential developers won't be scared off when they see industrial initially.
How much do we want to be in the business of defining the space, or should we let whoever comes to develop whatever they want?
That's a comment if I'm gonna build residential out there, and I'm taking all the risks.
Right.
I've got it involved, and you're saying, well, if somebody wants to come in with industrial, and I'm saying, well, maybe I'm not interested in it.
Yeah.
You know, because who's gonna wanna buy the house if say somebody puts a candy factory up across the street from it? You
Keep
know,
in mind too, it's been industrial for 25 years and it continues
Yeah,
to
and
sit
it's
there.
not, and
we
nobody has
have-
done anything out there.
We have marketable industrial space available.
Yes.
Agreed.
Right.
I think you zone it all
I agree.
residential.
I would ask the board to consider that strongly.
It's gone, 25 years it's been sitting out there, industrial, and nothing's happened.
But based on what amount of effort though? I mean,
I
if
found flyers.
if it just sat there and nobody knew it was there, then that speaks to the issue right
I
there.
think right now, the way the complexion's going with the community center, the water park, it is just,
Yeah,
it is
think
ripe for residential.
It is, it's,
Kids, there you go.
There you
Young
go.
families,
Yeah.
starter houses.
How close will this cut to the potential Parkwood expansion?
This doesn't touch it at all.
Yeah.
So in between our property is Louis Keene's property, and then you have the church property. On the north side. On the south side, we bump up against the church property.
I
Bill,
love
what do
it.
you think?
I'm mixed on it because I remember, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago when it came through planning and zoning originally, when Butterfield wanted to put their complex out there where the current apartments are. We voted it down because that property was not part of the original plan, or that development was not part of the original plan. When Butterfield withdrew everything and went over on Park Drive, a few years later, another entity came in to buy that same piece of land for its current use, the nursing home and the apartments. However, when it was presented to planning and zoning at the time, nothing was said about apartments. It was only nursing home. And both parcels were bought and rezoned. Come to find out, only part of it was a nursing home, and at that point, we already had it rezoned, and he was free to put apartments on, which upset some of the investors at Butterfield at the time because of that action of the board. Basically, I feel we were snookered on that, and it was a tough situation back then. The whole inception of this industrial park has changed with the water park, with the, I know when they let the commercial building go in on a corner, there was some dissension on that because that wasn't what the original use of that industrial park was for. But they gave an exception on that because it was a frontal piece of property to 32 and it was a prime retail location, so it was allowed then. But it was kind of decided that the rest of everything is not going to be developed except for its intended purpose from everything that took place to get all that property under city control, which I believe there was part of the Bussin estate money was used for that. And this was all the agreement with this cooperative that worked together on it, that it would be an industrial park. And we have a flyer back there that shows everything on there. That flyer came forward again when we had the water tower issue. But because of the development out there and the fact that it's sat with nothing done since then, I see a need to change the original direction of the industrial park, since there's been no interest in it other than for unintended purposes of the original plan. So I kind of see both ways on it. I wouldn't vote to stop it, I guess. I mean, I'm in support of doing something with it and getting some rooftops out there to, I mean, because we're not making anything on it now.
No.
I mean, we don't have any other room to grow, so, you know, my personal opinion is we've given it enough time to try to materialize for its intended purpose. Now we need to look at other options. That's my
I
personal
agree,
opinion.
it's been long enough.
Agreed, well said.
But you know, it's hard to say there hasn't been anything done out there because you got a water park, you've got apartments, you got Challenger complex, you've got.
Yeah, but it's not, I mean, it's
That's
not
not industrial. That's
industrial.
not industrial,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's leaning more towards a
Right.
great place for residential,
Exactly.
Right.
you know, because of the area out there, and it's,
But you know, if you're gonna turn this into residential and stuff, then why talk about Basler in progress, or, the other street over there,
Parkwood.
extending them? You know, you're basically doing away with doing anything there when that seems to be more of a residential area to me than,
problem is over there, this land, we got control.
Right.
The other, we have no control. We can't put a road in unless we get the property from the Catholic Church. When here, we have some control, we can make some things happen here, and if we spur growth, maybe in the future here, if we spur growth here, it'll make it easier on that end to spur more growth up through there. It's just ideal. The whole area is ideal for that, so.
And here's a left field question. Would you want to trade property with the church?
I don't think they'd have any need for the property up on the other end.
Well, you might be surprised.
never say never.
What deals could
Yeah.
be discussed.
There was some discussion about that.
That's right.
There was some discussion about the Catholic Church trading us property, because they want to keep their property, you know, so.
I mean, we're all at the table now.
Yeah, everybody's
all
at the
talking.
table. That's an opportunity, so.
I mean, I think it's worth discussion.
Yeah, if
Because
they,
it's an incentive. That's kind of what I was getting into. The next part was, you know, what kind of incentive? That's a potential incentive to say, hey, let's trade. You can leave that as is. And we'll see about developing this section.
But we had talked about offering incentives for not only that property, but other properties as well before. And Mark had said something about, we can't.
No, you gotta be really careful, because it's either, because you don't have your income source to fund those is problematic for residential. For commercial, you've got your retail aspect. But that's the incentive I'm thinking of.
We just can't give the property away.
Right.
Well, but he said we couldn't
We
have
have
a developer
Incentivize.
put the roads in and we couldn't own the property until they sold lots or something in the city.
I'll tell you,
Well, I mean, we had discussed tax incentives
what
and
happens
stuff,
if
and he had
a
said
large
no. we
nursing
couldn't.
home comes
Right.
in and wants to buy up half of this? There's no way the city could
This is
incentivize them?
King's property right here,
They could,
and that's a church.
could be a TIF of some sort.
Dave,
Seen it done.
is that the Louis King property?
So I
right
just-
there? Church.
We're trying to find some place right now for, well,
Oh, it's over
we
here.
can't find senior housing,
This is church.
good senior housing. We're on a wait list
The water park,
for my mother and father.
ours. There
And
might be a
this would be
particularly owned
ideal.
check, but most of it
and
is
I'm,
here.
I'm not
Right.
sure of this, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those apartments out there have had waiting lists before.
Yes. those
Pretty much
apartments
all
have waiting
apartments in
lists, too.
town, I think,
Yes,
have waiting
apartments are
lists.
hot. Anyway, so I think there was a resounding, let's market it, let's get it out there to market, now that we're just talking about how we're gonna market it.
I think one thing, and you probably all know already, but, you know, not wind cress, but windcress, so Bogey Creek
Right.
and the village that Joe was just talking about.
Butterfield.
Butterfield, they have 0 vacancy.
Right.
And both have
It's all
waiting
waiting
lists.
list, yes.
We're on a 1.5-year waiting list right now, at least. And that's just a guesstimate. We're 12 back. So I would ask you guys to consider that strongly. So,
Can we see where discussions on, with the church and the Parkwood go before we decide to take any actually at least rezoning this.
Well, if everybody said no, then I would take it to them and say, no, I mean, we can't even think about that. But now that I've got some input, it's like, yeah, we can discuss, we can keep this discussion going.
Finish the corner, that's the church.
Right.
In any number of directions and just see what's best for everybody. Some of the other stuff that was brought up for community development was the Fish and Wildlife Refuge project. List of city real estate for sale on state and national sites, that's what we're talking about with Progress Parkway. Offer incentives to attract business, work with the county, IDC and others to spur growth, address housing shortage. That's why we're talking about this. Extend Parkwood and Basler to Progress Parkway. Annex Old Marina. That's something to keep in mind. Land south and east of Valley Springs. Again, that would have to be annexation. And usually you want to do friendly annexation instead of trying to have an election and try to drag them into town. Cultural development, diversity, inclusion, improved website information for residents. Major projects, streets, sidewalks, city hall, police department, which again, we're working on all three of those. City website, have a timekeeping system, service contract assessment, IT upgrade, determine goals for economic development. What would be our goals? Are we looking for new business? Are we looking for, some people say, they kind of judge their development based on the amount of fast food restaurants that they have. I like the fact that we don't have as many fast food restaurants.
Right.
As many other towns. We have a lot of locals. And that money goes back into our economy. Also, housing development, so we're back to that. And water and sewer, nobody had any recommendations. So Steve, you guys are fine. All right.
Just keep it coming.
Happy, can I ask one question?
With
A
nice
second ago,
pressure.
you said sidewalks,
Yes.
and that something's going on with sidewalks. Can you expand on that?
We're trying to work on some grant money for that. We're having trouble getting one.
Any area in particular, or?
Where the worst areas, well, it depends on, depending on the grant money that you get, it would depend on the economic level of people on that street. And we would have to be doing some surveying to see if we could get that to work. From what I found out from
C1.
from the Regional Planning Commission, what I thought was available, they don't have available. Other places do have sidewalk money available. It's geared toward handicap accessibility. Bad sidewalks are inaccessible. But that's based on low to moderate income households, on average on that street. So I was going to look into that, but they said they don't have that kind of money available. So we're going to look at TAP money, if that ever becomes available again from MoDOT. At this point, they've shut down that program because of COVID.
Okay.
So,
Because at one point, we were working with safe routes to school, is that correct?
that's MoDOT.
That's MoDOT.
That was the
Okay.
MoDOT project. And they've held those projects back because of
Okay.
COVID at this point.
Because I do get a lot of inquiries about sidewalks to get kids to school.
Oh, God, yes. I've
So,
been hearing the same
but-
thing.
so we are working on it, there's just, the funding is on hold right now through a lot of programs. Okay, thank you.
So who got the last grant for the sidewalks up around the school? Was that?
Safe routes.
Wasn't that, I thought it was Wholesome. What?
Safe routes to school did the sidewalks, I believe, up Fifth.
Fifth and eighth. and
Oh, is that right?
Right.
Thank
That
you.
was a grant that they had.
Because
I
our
wasn't here, I
sidewalks
don't
for our
know if
kids.
it's 100%
We have,
or matching grants.
yeah, we have kids walking the streets on the way to school. Right?
I'm sorry.
We have some of our kids walking to school in the middle of the street, or on the side of the street without sidewalks.
Right.
And, I mean, that scares the tar out of me.
Sidewalks are a big concern amongst, when I go out to talk about code violations or nuisance violations, a lot of property owners, I'm talking about existing sidewalks and new sidewalks. It's a big concern.
And I think you're gonna hear sidewalk talk in that, meeting that you have, the Zoom meeting on
Oh, yeah.
Wednesday.
Yeah, next
From
Wednesday.
the
About what?
On that
info that
last
I've been given.
project they did, where they got the money.
That was the city that did that project.
So just keep in mind,
Safe
sidewalks
routes.
are our own, all sidewalks except the ones that have the little rocky look on main streets, on the downtown area, everything's owned by the property owners. That's why the city doesn't do it. If you want to think about a incentive program of some sort, where we would do that. We can come up with something along those lines. That would be money out of general fund and out of the street fund.
I'd be interested in you looking at
There
that.
is,
What's that?
I think there is an incentive on there now that it's like $3 a foot.
Yeah. It's not much.
Could we improve that?
Yeah, it's not very much.
Because what you'll end up with on some of these is the need to put in ramps and retaining walls because of elevation issues. It becomes fairly expensive.
It's just gonna take one kid, one person getting taken out, and then we're gonna sit here and say, why the hell didn't we do something about it? That's all I'm saying. I am in full support of incentivizing our residents any way we can to get sidewalks in.
Keep in mind, as they improve them too, they should consider accessibility.
Exactly, right.
You know, we require it.
Yeah.
We'd have to, so.
So
okay.
please consider that.
All right, so that kind of covers some of the areas. Again, this needs to be a longer, relaxed, we're not rushed to get to something else type of project. So I would say that in the future, if you're interested, what the best way to do this is you have somebody come in, they moderate it. Beforehand, there's a survey done with all the department heads and with the board, getting your input, and then have somebody then work through the discussion and come up with your main 3 objectives for the first year, 5 years, 10 years kind of thing. It's not a comprehensive plan. That's much more involved and involves the public. When you're talking your goals with the board, that's a little less, it's not as formal as that. It's more of a one day, you sit down and you kind of hammer out what you want. It changes every time there's an election, granted, but you can kind of keep with the same program for a while. But at least it gets everybody to have a chance to talk, find out if there's any issues they're not aware of, and decide where the city should go. So, the next up is just doing a performance review.
Motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Aye.
Do that.
Hold on, you need to cite, verbally, you need to cite the section that it applies to.
Motion to go into closed session for the performance ratings.
Section 610-021.
Oh, I had to say all that? Yeah, I said all that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a roll call?
Alderman Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
Alderwoman Johnson.
Yes.
Alderman Donovan.
Yes.
Alderman Jokers.
Yes.
Alderman Eidman.
Yes.
Alderman Yemi.
Yes.
Alderman Prince.
Yes.
Alderwoman Armbruster.
Yes.
Motion carries 7:30